Hello and welcome to another episode of Schlock Tactics, the movie podcast where we believe badder is better and aim to review the Razzie-tipped travesties so that you don't have to. My name is Ash and I'm joined once again by Mark. Oh, hi Mark.
Good evening.
So, as you may have gathered from the intro there, it's going to be a little bit of a different episode today in that we are going to be rounding up the 5 Worst Picture nominees for the upcoming Razzie Awards, which will be happening later on tonight, obviously, as will the Oscars. But we're not interested in the Oscars, and nor are you, hopefully. You're interested in the Razzies, so we're going to be letting you know. It's not going to be a huge breakdown like we usually do. 2 movies, we usually break them down in great detail, but we're going to be going through all 5 Worst Picture nominees. Last episode we did, if you missed it, it was our long-awaited Nicolas Cage Rampage. And got good feedback about that. So you guys obviously were waiting for us to do a Nick Cage episode for a while, and we did Vampire's Kiss and The Wicker Man remake. So you can still go back and check that out. But like I say, today we're going to be giving you maybe, apart from our Schlock Tactics episode, the most up-to-date reviews that you'll ever hear us do, because we're going to be reviewing all 5 films that came out in the last calendar year. Winchester. So this is the only kind of horror film that makes an appearance in these. This is sort of quite a traditional type ghost story based around the real life eccentric firearms heiress. I'm just reading off IMDb. Eccentric firearm heiress. It's quite hard to say. Sarah Winchester, played in this film by Helen Mirren. Oscar winner, Helen Mirren. Pretty much meat and potatoes horror film here, ghost film here. What were your impressions of Winchester overall?
It was a very sort of generic haunted house kind of, oh, the spirits are after me nonsense.
Or is she just crazy?
That kind of mentally unstable, or are there really ghosts kind of
I don't
thing.
think you even have to have seen that many horror films to be bored with this.
No. Even if you'd never seen a horror film, you'd find this generic.
And it's predictable.
Yeah. I felt sorry for Helen Mirren having to do such a repetitive, generic horror character when she's clearly a great actress.
I wonder why she did it. Yeah, perhaps she. I mean, if you guys look up the real life sort of life story of Sarah Winchester, it's much more interesting than this film makes it out to be. Like she was eccentric. She had like weird compartments built in her house, and this film does portray a bit of that in the way that it's like a clockwork house almost, with lots of hidden rooms, and there's over 200 rooms or whatever in the house, and she had like a spider web built into the house sort of structure because she thought it was good luck. So she was quite balmy, especially after her husband died and she became the heir to the Winchester gun empire. So that's all of that's a lot more interesting than what happens here, and I think she does her best to play it fairly straight and try and portray a sort of a fragile old woman that might be going mad. And the basic plot is that there's this doctor character played by Jason Clarke, who I know mainly from Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, and he's on all sorts of opium and stuff like that. So he's sort of seeing things. We're led to believe he's gone through some hard times and gotten hooked on it. And as soon as he gets there, they say, like, "Are you abusing medicines? How dare you? How dare you accuse me of abusing medicines? Of course not.
I'm a professional."
Yeah, and he's like, well, if you are, you can't be here and you can't be assessing Sarah Winchester. He's basically hired by her adversaries in the shareholdings of the company, who want to oust her because she's gone crazy and she's seeing ghosts. Or has she gone crazy? Are there maybe ghosts? I don't think we really got a resolution to that, did we?
No. Any of the sort of horror, inverted commas, is based on these kind of cheap, jumpy bits with like
a boy with no legs.
Just coming out, and it's the same thing over and over again, just in different scenes, and it's
The scariest bit of this entire film for me was when my cat sneezed. So I don't think that's saying much about the atmosphere and the horror, the effective horror of Winchester. So if it's pretty bad if it sends you to sleep. Believe it or not, this did actually win some awards, primarily from the Australian Screen Sound Guild, or the ASG Awards. So this did actually win awards for best sound editing, sound mixing, sound design. I didn't notice anything particularly good, and I listened to it on quite a good sound bar. I mean, a bad horror film is still a horror film, and I'll still watch it, and I've seen a lot worse than this. And I sometimes get suspicious when the Razzies nominate a horror film, thinking they're maybe just being a bit sniffy about, horror's not as good as other stuff. But I would say it's pretty fair to nominate this one. It was a pretty boring film. Not a lot happened. There's a much more interesting story there. Look up Sarah Winchester, the real-life character. It's an interesting Wikipedia article. It's not an interesting 90-minute horror film. Next one we're going to talk about is the Happytime Murders. Now, this is notable for combining live action and puppets in a way that not that many films do. It was directed by Brian Henson, son of Jim Henson, who has been in charge of the Muppets empire since his dad died in the late 90s. So it's made by a genuine puppet expert.
Yeah.
This is obviously on the more adult side. Think Team America. Got to get it off my chest, Mark. I enjoyed this film.
I enjoyed this film. I was waiting for my moment to say I genuinely enjoyed this film. I would actually watch this again.
I laughed when I was meant to laugh.
Yeah.
And I can understand why it would be nominated, because it's very juvenile and like base, but I laughed a lot, and I liked the idea of these two worlds colliding, and the fact that the main puppet character had been the first ever puppet cop, and then he accidentally shot a civilian, so now no puppets can be cops and they're second-class citizens and stuff. It's a bit lofty for this film to be going for like civil rights analogies, but there was some sort of point I think they were going for, but it was mostly just like really crass, juvenile, like dick jokes, and puppets having sex, and puppets like getting hooked on glitter, like snorting glitter and getting off their tits and stuff. Yeah, I laughed pretty consistently when I was meant to. So I'm not sure why this is here really.
Yeah, I liked the kind of seedy underground LA setting with like this ridiculous references to like hookers and drugs. And that sex scene in the office was just ridiculous.
Silly string ejaculate. But the basic plot is that there are it is a world where puppets and humans sort of reluctantly share in existence, and there is a TV show from the 80s or whenever called the Happytime Bunch. So it's like Sesame Street or something like that, and then all the characters, or all the actors rather, are getting knocked off now in succession, and the lead detective puppet has to team up with Melissa McCarthy character, detective as well, to solve these. I would say the only times when this film suffered was when Melissa McCarthy was trying to be funny, because she's really not very funny, and I've never laughed at her intentionally. She tries very hard, and I don't find she ever gets anywhere with it. She's in a unique position this weekend of being nominated for this film, for Razzies, and also nominated for a film called Can You Ever Forgive Me, which is Oscar nominated. So she could be coming away with a Razzie in one hand and an Oscar in the other, a la Halle Berry from 15 years ago. So I guess she's good in some things. I haven't seen her be good in anything, but I've only ever seen her in like daft comedies where she's just not being that funny. So I thought if there was a weak point, it was her, and I wasn't that keen on her comedic stylings, which tend to be just shout at people. Adam Sandler's same approach, quite a lot of people take that approach. Loud is funny, not really. But yeah, like I say, there's like puppets with drug problems, there's like prostitute puppets, it's just like a whole like noir puppet styling, and I think it's something that has been done before, obviously, with not just Team America, but notably by Peter Jackson's Meet the Feebles movie, which was entirely puppets being entirely inappropriate and offensive. It was like the second or third Peter Jackson movie from the early 90s, and I think perhaps this is picking up where he left off then. Obviously he's gone on to bigger things, not better things, but I think they've perhaps thought there's still some untapped comedy in getting a puppet or a cartoon to say fuck, or to ejaculate, to do all these sorts of things. So
I said earlier I'd watch it again. There are obviously some cliches in there when Melissa McCarthy's character and the main puppet hate each other at the start, and then they work together, and it's a
buddy cop film.
Yeah, it's got that. Yeah, we hate each other, now we like each other, and the plot wasn't exactly like that complex, but it was just an enjoyable film. It was just funny throughout.
I would recommend this.
Yeah,
to a lot of people I know, actually. So Okay, next one we're going to talk about is Robin Hood. Now, I was sure that this was directed by Guy Ritchie, but I was corrected by IMDb. It should have been directed. This is yet another reimagining of the Robin Hood tale. There have been loads and loads of them. Prince of Thieves, most notably, with Kevin Costner. First film I ever saw in the cinema a while back. It was also done in cartoon form with a fox as Robin Hood. It's been, I think if you're using cartoons to tell it, you've probably done everything you can.
Yeah.
It was even done, 8 years ago by Ridley Scott with Russell Crowe, and that fell on its ass.
Yeah.
But for some reason, they decided they'll have another go. So here we are again, Robin Hood in a strangely modern but not really modern retelling, starring Taron Egerton from The Kingsman and Oscar winner Jamie Foxx.
Yeah.
Another one that won an Oscar and gave up. So it's a weird. I read in the trivia for this that the designers were told to make it the costumes like 1/3 historically accurate, 1/3 futuristic, and I'm not sure what the other third was, but
I noticed that because I thought
it was
they were
weirdly
wearing
sci-fi,
like modern
leather jackets. And
yeah,
stuff.
and I was like, isn't this meant to be? It just didn't make any sense.
And like Robin Hood is wearing like a hoodie, and he's
Yeah.
like a bit of a yob. Like it's a very muddled retelling that doesn't appear to take place in any particular time.
No.
And there's even, the plot just follows what the plot of Robin Hood always is. Obviously, a peasant sort of rises up to stop the sheriff of Nottingham. Ben Mendelsohn here, who's a go-to villain in like Star Wars and Ready Player One and stuff like that. He's the sheriff of Nottingham. And the plot is always the same, that Robin Hood and his merry men, or just Little John in this one, Jamie Foxx's character, will rise up, and there'll be a peasant rebellion and all that sort of stuff. So same story again. The bit I was most confused by was when they appeared to be in the Iraq War.
In Arabia, isn't it? I think.
So they sort of it's like crusades and stuff like that.
Yeah.
They get sent to Arabia to crusade for the Christian religion, a bit like the Iraq War, I guess. I don't know. Strange like political statement they were trying to make for what is not a political film, and they were wearing like proper flak jackets and modern looking. They were still had bows and arrows and stuff, but I thought that was an interesting. Like when people do Shakespeare, but with modern dress. Yeah. It's like sometimes there's a point to it, sometimes there isn't.
Yeah, all they did that for was really to set up the thing with Jamie Foxx's character's son being murdered.
Getting beheaded.
Yeah. And Jamie Foxx's character losing his hand. And it seemed like that's all they needed that intro part for, because then he couldn't like use a bow and arrow properly. And
he had to wear like a big like metal club on one hand for the rest of the film, which I'm not sure why. There was also the idea that Robin Hood was like he was drafted to go to Arabia, into the Crusades, but he didn't really want to go, and he left behind his maid Marion, obviously left behind his love, and he showed mercy, so he was kicked out of the Crusades and sent back. Just a weird, I don't know, I couldn't say I couldn't say it was massively shit, but it was boring. I fell asleep a little bit in this one as well.
Yeah.
They were groping for something interesting, but it just Taron Egerton playing on his character from The Kingsman, where he's like a chav. He's almost like a Robin Hood chav character, and just constant confusion around the dress and what they were meant to be doing. Where are we meant to be? What time is it meant to be? It's meant to be Nottingham. It doesn't. It just looks weird. Yeah. There's some cool bow and arrow stuff. Like particularly in Arabia, they had like sort of a minigun, but it was bow and arrow instead. Comedian Tim Minchin was in this as well.
That was really surprising.
I was like, who is that guy? It looks like Bill Bailey, but younger. Oh no, that is Tim Minchin. That's his look.
He played like a commoner, but he was quite a friendly.
I think
character.
he was Friar Tuck.
Yes, that's it. Yeah.
And then Jamie Dornan from the 50 Shades of Grey films was Will Scarlett, who's like the sort of rival to Robin Hood, trying to start a bit of a proletariat uprising as well. I had no idea the actor was Northern Irish. I was like, fuck, he's doing a really good Northern Irish accent. That's really hard for Americans. Oh, hang on. bit of a slog, bit of a bore, went on for too long, and we hardly need another Robin Hood film.
No.
We didn't need Ridley Scott's Robin Hood, and we don't need this, but
I didn't really think much of the Sheriff of Nottingham character.
No.
Or many of the other characters
It didn't
really
change much about that. I thought it probably would have been good in the cinema, like when they were in Arabia and it was all like there were arrows going off. Like my surround sound was like pretty good. It was like
That's quite cool
things
effects.
blowing up.
Yeah.
If you want a film where things blow up, a surprising amount of things considering it's meant to be medieval.
Yeah.
Lots of things do still blow up. So if you want like a ropey, brainless action film. Probably one of the best examples from last year, or worst examples, depending on your perspective. But yeah, Robin Hood. Now we come on to a film that I think we were both dreading watching. I had to go to the pub first and come back. This is, I mean, there's a common theme here. Yet another adaptation of Sherlock Holmes' character and the Watson character. This is Holmes and Watson, starring Will Ferrell and John C. Reilly, a duo that I think we've been beaten over the head with in the sort of 10 or so years since Step Brothers. I think would have been that was the first thing that they were paired together, and I can't say I've really laughed at Will Ferrell since Anchorman, really.
No.
Very fleetingly. An incredible piece of shit, really. I wasn't expecting much. My expectations were absolute zero, and they were not met. This is directed by someone called Ethan Cohen. No, not Ethan
very
Cohen.
Close to Ethan, yeah.
It's not Ethan Cohen. I wish it were.
Ethan must be really worried about people getting that mixed up.
How fucking dare you? Change. I insist you change your name more. The IMDb says a humorous take.
It's already wrong.
I disagree.
Yeah.
I mean, where to start with this? I mean, like you say, you don't expect it to be very funny with Will Ferrell and John C. Reilly doing English accents and portraying English gentlemen, but fucking hell, I didn't laugh at anything.
This was awful.
I couldn't bring myself to laugh at anything. It wasn't so bad. It was good. It was just so awful.
It was so boring. I really struggled not to zone out while I was watching this. I was just bored, and it was just cringy, like not in a good way. I was just like, this is not funny. I'm desperate to know who found this funny. Yeah.
who laughed at these jokes. Like I wanna go back in time into the cinema and find someone and just shake them and say, what the fuck are you laughing at? What are you laughing at? Yeah, I mean they obviously go for a lot of jokes, and I notice a lot of the humour in this. A good example of the type of humour in this is when Will Ferrell says, I've got a brilliant disguise, turns around and puts a big moustache on, turns back around, and Holmes, or Watson rather, is, where have you gone, Sherlock? Where have you gone? Yeah. He's like, no, it is me. I just have a disguise. That's the level here. Yeah. That's one of the better jokes, maybe.
The only bit that was close to being funny for me is when woman that Holmes likes starts eating that onion, and he was previously doing that with Watson, and he was like, found it was like strangely arousing.
Eating an onion? I don't remember that.
Do you remember that?
I may have fallen asleep.
Like, eating an onion full, but yeah, it's not even worth going into.
I thought there were some vague attempts at like, and again, it's very lazy, but what if we take modern technology and apply it to old time Victorian? So there's a bit that almost made me laugh where he asks a guy to telegram a dick pic to a girl that he fancies and gets his knob out and puts it on a counter. I thought that we were, again, very juvenile, but we were maybe approaching a laugh.
Yeah.
I felt the corners of my mouth perhaps incline 10 degrees. Drove it into the ground, and there was stuff like, let's take a selfie with Queen Victoria. So they have like a massive classic, box where you have to flash the bulb and stuff, and just that sort of stuff. Steve Coogan pops up in this as well.
Yeah.
What the hell is he thinking? And also WWE wrestler Braun Strowman appears in this, dressed exactly as he dresses, and under the character name Braun, and using his same accent. I mean, the main problem with this film is the accents.
Yeah.
Will Ferrell and John Reilly cannot do English accents. No. Will Ferrell in particular cannot do an English accent. and doesn't even really try that hard. But he still tries.
I wonder if they thought it was going to be a good film. John Riley and...
Can't imagine. I mean, if you believe IMDb trivia, I know we had some good ones on here last episode. Apparently, Sony attempted to sell the film to Netflix after the test screenings, to which Netflix declined. But I mean, Netflix have been funding Adam Sandler movies, so it's not like they're above this sort of thing. Yeah. But I found the historical jumping around weird as well. Like, they go on the Titanic at the end. It's meant to be Victorian London, and they go on the Titanic. Makes no fucking sense. No. Just the jumping around, and like they play Unchained Melody at one point, obviously massively out of historical context, just so they can make a vague reference to Ghost with Patrick Swayze because there's some pottery in the background. It's not worth it. Like, it's not worth like fucking with the historical accuracy of your film for these jokes. Like, just don't bother.
They don't make enough of an impact.
No, what is the point? Like, I just got like Rob Brydon in it as well. Hugh Laurie briefly. They must have pictures of these people doing unspeakable things to get them into this film. Like, how does it happen? Been a very long time since Will Ferrell was funny, and like I say, my expectations to this film were probably minus, and they still weren't met. And I don't ever want to see this again. And there are hints at a sequel at the end as well, where they go to the Wild West. Yeah. That's not going to happen, surely.
Please not, no.
Holmes and Watson, absolutely wretched piece of shit.
Don't watch it.
Absolutely don't watch it.
I can't enjoy it, not even in an ironic way.
No. I mean, you can always, if you want this sort of stuff, I guess you could always watch the Robert Downey Jr. and Jude Law Sherlock Holmes films from maybe 10 years ago. Maybe they're better than this. I haven't seen them. And then a lot of people like the Benedict Cumberbatch and Martin Freeman Sherlock series, which... I'm sure it's better than this. So there's a ton of Sherlock Holmes adaptations out there. You shouldn't need to watch this one, and you shouldn't watch it. And then finally, we get to the much talked about Gotti, John Travolta's crime biopic, crime epic, mafia biopic of John Gotti, the head of the Gambino crime family. This was much talked about when it came out as being Battlefield Earth levels of bad, for which John Travolta won many Razzies. Nearly 2 hours long. It certainly seems to portray a real life mob boss person that I wasn't familiar with prior to this.
I didn't know about this.
I sort of think if you've seen one mob film, you've seen them all. What did you think of Gotti? We've just finished watching it.
So it had some like parts that made me laugh. I think some of them were intentional, some of them weren't intentional, but it just seemed quite disjointed to me. It's like
the timeline jumped around more than John Travolta's hairline.
Like I was like, it didn't really work. The structure didn't work.
No, because he was meant to be telling his son his life story from prison just before he was going to die from cancer. A lot of people in this film die of cancer. Yeah. Considering it's a mob film, more people die from cancer than they do from being shot, which is weird. But he's retelling from 1999. He's retelling his son how he came to be a mob boss in the 70s and 80s and a little bit in the 90s. But it doesn't really follow a linear timeline. It jumps around. To me, it seems to jump around, and I could only keep track of it by whether he had hair, didn't have hair, was looking rough as arseholes, you know. Yeah.
It was like, well, who's this character that's died now? What?
And there were bits that were so bad it was good. Like, I think it definitely had like Wiseau vibes to it. Like, in the way
those moments.
Yeah, he had those moments where he's really gone for it. He's been really intense, and it's hilarious. Like,
he was slapping around the kids when they got in that fight.
Yeah, there was one scene where John Gotti's son, just him and his mates walk into a bar, and about 10 seconds in, the dialogue is dreadful for this film. It's just, oh, you motherfucker, what a fucker, I'm gonna fucking kill you. It's just the worst kind of cliche of a mob film. I couldn't even hear most of what they were saying. It was just motherfucker, what's up with you, motherfucker? And I didn't think I was missing any plot for it. No. But it's this extended bar fight scene where John Gotti's son and his mates are like barreling over these like guys in a bar, and it goes on for ages. It was like the Channel 5 news fight from Anchorman. It just went on for like this escalated, and we're like, oh fucking hell. And then John Travolta bursts in and goes, "Did you know someone died tonight?" And just starts slapping the shit out of his son. It was bizarre.
I was expecting him to like grab them by the collar or something and like throw them around, but he started bitch slapping them.
There were a lot of overacting here from John Travolta, like Nick Cage levels of overacting, and I feel like maybe ever since Face Off, John Travolta has tried to go the Cagean route of just fucking going for it, even if you know you're in a bad film.
Yeah.
But this was almost like a music video version of a biopic. Like there was loads of like hip hop, even though it was all set in the 70s. There was loads of like quite very modern music talking about rappers are obsessed with mob bosses and stuff. And I did think there were sort of shades of Narcos here, and the John Gotti character was a little bit like Pablo Escobar, particularly in the news footage, the genuine news footage of people going like, he was a good guy, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, he murdered people, but like it was always his own kind, and he always made sure the streets were safe for people like us.
He was good for the community, man.
It's the same shit you see in stock footage of people like mourning the loss of Pablo Escobar. Like, he was a murdering scumbag, but he was our murdering scumbag, man. And it was, the street, it's just not the same now he's gone. Like, there's loads of punks and like loads of amateur criminals. Like, we preferred organised criminals. Like, there's some ludicrous parts, and I sort of enjoyed it. I thought that the guy that played his son was particularly bad.
Yeah.
Actor. All his dialogue was terrible and terribly delivered as well. The idea was that he was the guy that was going to get out of the mafia lifestyle. It was good use of like real news footage, real stock footage and stuff like that. John Travolta's wife, Kelly Preston, was in this as well, apparently. I didn't notice here. She was his wife in this also. I was a bit surprised. It definitely wasn't as bad as it had been made out to be by people when it came out. It was just long, quite drawn out.
Yeah.
Probably didn't need to be that long. It was just a bit weird. John Travolta's performance was a bit like, are you okay? Just like those Nick Cage performances we talked about last time. Like, are you all right?
His facial expressions. And
it's everything. A lot of the time he was pulling a face like he just like had a really sour Haribo or something. And that was his like, I'm a scary mob guy kind of face. But there was lots of violence in this as well, which was quite good. And lots of motherfucker. And, I get the feeling that Travolta always wanted to be in one of those mob films, but never could be, and now he has been.
And it's not great.
It's pretty shit.
Yeah.
So there you go. That's the 5 Worst Picture nominees for the Razzies that are going to be happening later on tonight. So we'll go now through the different categories. Obviously, we can only judge the films that we've seen here. Out of the 5 Worst Picture nominees here that we've talked about and that we've unfortunately had to watch, which one do you think is the worst picture? Which one do you think will go away with the prize?
I think I've got to say Holmes and Watson is just one of the worst films I've ever seen.
It's irredeemable.
Yeah, it has no redeeming qualities. There's
nothing good about it.
No. At least the other films had some interesting themes or some good dialogue in them, even if they were quite crap. But this just had nothing enjoyable about it. It was the humour was just not humorous.
There was no humour.
Plot was just not worth following. I couldn't be bothered to take even notice of what was going on.
It
was just terrible.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, like you say, a lot of the other films here, at least they've tried something, even if they're working with stuff that's been done 100 times, you know, like Robin Hood. They tried to do a weird, futuristic, meandering take on it. You know, Winchester and Gotti were taking real life interesting people and making a film about them. Happytime Murders did something quite interesting that I wasn't expecting as well, but Holmes and Watson is the lowest point of all the adaptations of Sherlock Holmes, and there's loads of them. There's like dozens and dozens of adaptations because I guess the copyright is long gone on those, and anyone can do one. We could do one probably. It would still be better. Arthur Conan Doyle would spin in his grave if he was made to watch Holmes and Watson.
Shit.
So absolutely the worst picture. Holmes and Watson, I anticipate will be picking that up unless Gotti gets it, but I think it should be Holmes and Watson. Worst actress category. We've got a couple in here that we haven't seen. Jennifer Garner in Peppermint, Amber Heard in London Fields. Melissa McCarthy actually double nominated for the Happytime Murders and Life of the Party, which I haven't heard of. Helen Mirren in Winchester and Amanda Seyfried in The Clapper, whatever that is. So obviously we can only judge Melissa McCarthy and Helen Mirren here in the two films that we've watched here. Which do you think is the worst actress out of those? Which one should win out of those two? One is an Oscar winner.
Yeah, it's difficult.
One could be an Oscar winner by the time this goes out.
It's difficult because Helen Mirren's a good actress, but she had to spout a load of drivel about ghosts and spirits and stuff.
Yeah.
Whereas Melissa McCarthy isn't great, but I enjoyed the film.
She might be great one day.
So I guess I'll go for Melissa McCarthy.
Yeah.
I think it was otherwise a good film, and she was the only thing about it that I didn't like, really.
Yeah. I feel like Helen Mirren did her best in a bad film.
Yeah.
But Melissa McCarthy was bad in quite a good film.
Yeah.
So that's the parallel I have to draw. Yeah, like I say, I think maybe people have been writing, pigeonholing Melissa McCarthy as just being this loudmouthed, obnoxious character that shouts at everyone. And maybe with this Oscar-nominated film, she doesn't do that. Maybe she just does something interesting. I'd be interested to see that if it does win an Oscar. Perhaps I'll check it out. But I think, maybe she will be good one day, and be given roles that allow her to do something interesting rather than just shitting jokes or pissing jokes or just I'm a foul-mouthed woman. You can't handle that. You can't handle that, can you? It's just not funny. So
Snorting glitter.
Snorting glitter, that was funny actually. Yeah, that was the only bit I laughed at her when I was meant to.
Yeah.
When she was shouting after snorting rainbow glitter. So yeah, Melissa McCarthy, worst actress out of the ones we've seen there. Listeners can let us know if the other performances here are worse. We haven't been able to see all of the Razzie films. It's not fair to make anyone watch all of the Razzie films. Worst actor, Johnny Depp, voice only, Sherlock Gnomes. It's possible there is a worse Sherlock Holmes film this year, but
Sherlock Gnomes.
Sherlock Gnomes, if anyone knows what that is, I mean, I can imagine. Wow, okay. Sherlock Gnomes is an adaptation of Sherlock Holmes featuring gnomes, as you'd imagine, starring Johnny Depp, James McAvoy, Emily Blunt, Michael Caine.
5.1 on IMDb. That's higher than Holmes and Watson, which was 3 something.
So there you go. An animated gnome-based adaptation of Sherlock Holmes was better. So there you go. Johnny Depp is nominated for voice only. I'm sure he can get away with that. Will Ferrell in Holmes and Watson. John Travolta in Gotti. Donald Trump as himself. Death of a Nation of Fahrenheit 11/9. I don't know what those things are. I'm assuming these are documentaries. And Bruce Willis in the Death Wish remake. So obviously we can only judge Will Ferrell and John Travolta here, both very grating performances. Which one of those would you say is the worst actor?
I think it's got to be Will Ferrell.
Yeah.
It's just nothing good about it. It's a terrible accent, no good humour.
John Travolta's accent was really good.
Yeah.
I know he talks a bit like that anyway.
And he was kind of funny when he was meant to be funny.
He did some Nick Cage freaking out and made me laugh a few times.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Whereas Will Ferrell was just bad.
He just sucked the energy out of the film.
Yeah.
Worst supporting actor, we've got Jamie Foxx in Robin Hood. Ludacris, voice only in Show Dogs. Joel McHale in Happytime Murders. He was one of the FBI agents that came in. Blinking, you would have missed him. John C. Reilly, Holmes and Watson, and Justice Smith in Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom. So we've got a couple there. Jamie Foxx, Joel McHale, or John C. Reilly in terms of supporting actors.
Well, I liked Jamie Foxx. I think he was one of the better things about Robin Hood, even though none of the characters were that amazing. It's got to be John C. Reilly. I mean, he's been put in a very bad film.
It's weird, really, because you couldn't really say that Will Ferrell was the lead and John Reilly wasn't. I felt they were on fairly equal pegging.
It's a shame because John C. Reilly's
he's done some good stuff. Yeah. It's been like Boogie Nights and stuff like that.
I watched What's Eating Gilbert Grape recently? He was in that, right? Yeah.
Yeah, he's capable. He needs to stop hanging out with Will Ferrell. It's not good for him. It's not good for his career.
No.
Yeah, I don't know. I wasn't keen on Jamie Foxx. I thought his accent was terrible as well. I don't know where he was meant to be from. North Africa, it was meant to be, but it was North Africa by way of America, by way of Jamaica. It was kind of ropey. But he didn't really talk much, and he was just a physical kind of character, so I couldn't really fault him too much. Joel McHale, I don't even remember being in the Happytime Murders, whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. He didn't make an impression on me, so I can't say he was the worst. So yeah, I'd have to go with John C. Reilly as well. But like I say, if you're standing next to Will Ferrell, you can't look that bad. he was not as bad as Will Ferrell. You have to give him that.
Yeah.
Worst supporting actress, Kellyanne Conway in Fahrenheit 11/9, Marcia Gay Harden, 50 Shades Freed, Kelly Preston in Gotti, Jazz Sinclair in Slender Man, another horror film, and Melania Trump as herself in Fahrenheit 11/9. I mean, we've only seen Gotti out of this list, so
can't really judge that.
Sorry,
one.
Kelly Preston, you win by default on this one, although I can't say she did anything terrible. There was a bit where she was freaking out after her son was run over, where she was a bit ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's the only bit I really noticed her, so I couldn't say too much about that. Worst screen combo, the picture here sort of influences you. We have any two actors or puppets, especially in those creepy sex scenes, the Happytime Murders. Johnny Depp and his fast-fading film career.
Ooh, brutal.
Will Ferrell and John C. Reilly trashing two of literature's most beloved characters, Holmes and Watson. Kelly Preston and John Travolta getting Battlefield Earth type reviews. Gotti. Donald J. Trump and his self-perpetuating pettiness. I don't know if this is all the words of the Razzies. I don't know if the article here is imprinting something of their own. So we've got a couple of options there. Then any two actors or puppets, Will Ferrell and John C. Reilly, or Kelly Preston and John Travolta.
I hate going for the same film every time, but it's got to be Will Ferrell and John C. Reilly, surely.
Together. If they're the worst actors separately, they have to be the worst combo. I couldn't say that any two puppets in Happytime Murders were worse than them.
No.
They could have been puppets in the Happytime Murders.
I enjoyed all of the puppets, really.
I think the best place for Will Ferrell is to play a puppet.
Yeah.
So I think he'd be better off.
Yeah.
Now, worst remake, rip-off or sequel. We actually have a film here that we reviewed last year, creeping back in.
We got the Meg.
Yeah. Now, they consider the Meg a rip-off of Jaws. I'm not sure if I would agree with that, just because it's a big shark.
Yeah, it's not the same.
It's a bit unfair, and it also wasn't that bad. Robin Hood, Holmes and Watson, Death Wish, Death of a Nation. I think we have to go for Holmes and Watson again.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just the same category again, really. But I don't think the Meg was a rip-off of Jaws, and it certainly wasn't as bad as Holmes and Watson. It was sort of enjoyable.
Yeah.
Worst director. Now this takes a bit more thinking. Ethan Cohen. Not Ethan Cohen. Ethan Cohen, Holmes and Watson. Kevin Connolly for Gotti. James Foley for 50 Shades Freed. Brian Henson, Happytime Murders. And the Spearig brothers. Not Spielberg, Spearig. People are just naming themselves after famous directors to see if anyone mistakes it.
Try and get some popularity from it.
So in terms of how the films are directed, try and think from this perspective. Are we going for Holmes and Watson, Gotti, Happytime Murders, or Winchester? Bit of a tough one.
Yeah.
I think Winchester was quite well directed. I quite enjoyed the camera work.
I don't think Gotti was well directed, really.
No. It was a bit of a mess.
But I can't say that Holmes and Watson was better directed.
I couldn't say that it was directed at all, really. At no point did it stand out to me. Yeah, it's a tough one. I'd say, again, it's between Holmes and Watson and Gotti, as many of these categories are. They're both very sporadic, jumping all over the place, like you say, in terms of the... Could go either way there. Maybe Holmes and Watson, just because everything about it is bad.
Yeah, it's got to be.
By the same token, worst screenplay, Death of the Nation, 50 Shades Freed, Gotti, Happytime Murders, or Winchester. Or Holmes and Watson isn't in this category.
Oh, wow.
It didn't make the worst screenplay. What?
I'm going to mix it up a bit.
So we have to go for Gotti, Happytime Murders, or Winchester as a screenplay. It's a little bit tougher.
Winchester was a film where the directing was pretty good, but it was let down.
Ropey dialogue in Winchester and Gotti, but at least in Gotti, the dialogue was being spoken by what we were led to believe were just idiot mob people who don't have a great grasp of the English language and can only say motherfucker 6 times every sentence. So sort of suited the film, but it was also like I couldn't understand what anyone was saying.
Yeah.
But Winchester is meant to be a period film, so they're meant to be speaking in a certain way. It depends, how it was delivered as well.
I reckon maybe Winchester.
I think I would have to go for Gotti on that one, just because of how unintelligible the dialogue was. I think if you can't understand what's being said, it's not great dialogue. Winchester, I think if you view it in terms of a period horror film, which obviously is, people in those old films often speak really strangely and ropey. I'll go Gotti.
Yeah.
We'll see what the Razzies say. But that is all the categories. So it looks like overall Holmes and Watson is the main offender from the last year, but John Travolta is not done yet. Don't count him out. He's still capable of making an awful film. So there is. Those are our thoughts on the 5 worst picture nominees. Our predictions for which ones we think will possibly take home the Golden Raspberry in various categories. I don't think any of these movies are also Oscar nominated. I didn't check, but I don't think so. Recommendations. I think we've mentioned a few of them. I think if you sort of enjoyed Gotti, you would probably like Goodfellas. Got The Godfather 1, The Godfather 2. Godfather 3 is more on the lines of what Gotti is in terms of messiness. Happytime Murders, if you like that, definitely. Team America, World Police.
Yeah.
Probably even South Park, Bigger, Longer, Uncut as well. Similar humour. And Peter Jackson's Meet the Feebles, pretty ahead of its time in terms of foul-mouthed puppets. If you enjoyed Holmes and Watson, I don't know what to say to you.
If you want similar films, what planet are you on?
I mean, I guess if you want a film where these people are being funny, you could try Step Brothers. That's kind of funny. But, of course, Will Ferrell's crowning achievement is Anchorman, and always will be. No one can take that film away from us, really. No matter what he does, you can't change it.
That's when he peaked, yeah.
He peaked up, and it's popular for a reason. It's a classic for a reason. And if you want a good Sherlock Holmes, go back to like the Basil Rathbone 30s and 40s versions, or they even did a few with Peter Cushing and Christopher Lee, like the Hound of the Baskervilles and stuff like that. That's good. Good Sunday morning matinee fun. It'd be a lot more fun than this. Robin Hood, like I say, first film I ever saw. Prince of Thieves in the cinema with Kevin Costner and Morgan Freeman playing the kind of Jamie Foxx character. Alan Rickman, unforgettable as the Sheriff of Nottingham. Like, it's a great film. I don't know. It's one of those films I loved instantly as a child, and I've been completely unaware of whether other people think it's bad or good. I know Kevin Costner is hit and miss. I've always thought it was a great film. Perhaps it's a great film and a bad film. You could try Robin Hood Men in Tights, a bit of a sillier one, and you can try Robin Hood done by foxes and badgers if you like that sort of thing. Winchester, again, I'm thinking of Hammer horror type stuff, period ghost horror. The Woman in Black from a couple of years ago is a good example of that done really well. I think they were trying to channel a little bit of The Conjuring, maybe. Also a film called The Awakening, starring Rebecca Hall, who was in Holmes and Watson, unfortunately. That was an interesting film about spirit photography and like charlatans of the Victorian era, of the Edwardian era, rather. So if you've had a chance to check out these 5 films, my condolences. Let us know what you did think. You can get in touch with us on Facebook, Instagram and Twitter at Schlock Tactics. And we have had a little bit of feedback from friend of the show, What a Ranker, who I know for a fact has watched nearly every film that came out last year, so by proxy had to have seen these films. So I was waiting to see what they would have in their list. So What a Ranker gave his thoughts on all 5 of these films. Said Robin Hood was a tone-deaf, needless movie. Happytime Murders was trying so hard and was cringy and not in the way they intended. Disagree. The Winchester, they've said, was just completely hollow, had no substance to it at all. Holmes and Watson hurt to watch, didn't land a single joke, and further buried Will Ferrell's career.
That's perfect.
That's spot on.
Yeah.
And Gotti was just boring. But I would say Gotti was the worst for committing the cardinal movie sin and making me feel absolutely nothing. Being made horribly uncomfortable by how bad the rest were is better than literally emotionless.
That's quite an interesting perspective.
Yeah. So What a Ranker there was not moved by one of the little Gotti kids being run over on his bike. He was not moved by people being sentenced to life in prison, 5 lives in prison. Not moved by John Travolta's performance. I think you've definitely got a point there. I think Gotti could walk away with most of the Razzies here, but we're sticking with Holmes and Watson for the most part. So yeah, if you want to get in touch like What a Ranker has, hit us up on Instagram, Facebook and Twitter. Let us know if you've seen these films, what you thought, which ones you think will win the Razzies tonight. Or if you're listening to this in the future, let us know that we were wrong. Maybe Holmes and Watson hasn't won any Razzies, but we'll see. Subscribe to the podcast. Whenever we release an episode, you'll be the first to know about it, and give us a 5-star rating in iTunes if you wouldn't mind as well. Also head on over to YouTube, where our channel has just launched in the last couple of weeks. We've got every podcast is going to be going on there as well, so you can listen to it on YouTube as well. Subscribe over there, and we may even release a little bit of extra content on there from time to time. But that has been another episode of Schlock Tactics. My name has been Ashley, and I've been joined by Mark.
Thanks for listening,
and we will see you next time. Bye.